Welcome back to the Crown Plaza Hotel, the Mojito Lounge, where we are shooting the pre-draft show, Night Sports Productions. We're joined by Roy Cummings. Roy, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for making me a part of it.
Roy, when we look at this draft, some people have players in the top 10 and other draft experts have them in the low first round or second round or worse. Is it just me, or is this the strangest draft in
No, you're right.
long time?
Leo, you're absolutely right. There's probably half a dozen players at least that some people think they're worthy of top 10 selection. Some people think they're bottom of the first round, early second round players. You're talking about guys like Derek Barnett, University of Tennessee defensive end. You're talking about Jabril Peppers, who could end up in the third round. Even Dalvin Cook, Florida State. There's another guy who some people think is worthy of a top 15 pick. Some think he should go into the second round. So I'm not exactly sure why it is. I think it's just a disparity in the way some teams grade. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's a very strange collection of players in some cases that if you think you like the guy, you might be able to get him, but you might also have to reach for him.
Roy, looking specifically at the Buccaneers, what one position on offense and defense do they need to concentrate on in this draft?
Well, I think on offense in particular, you got to look at running back. The situation with Doug Martin is really tenuous at this point. He's coming out of rehab for a drug dependency issue. He's got the PED violation. Still has 3 games he's got to serve on that suspension. So, and behind him, you got Charles Sims, who's a nice third down, change of pace kind of back, and Jaquiz Rodgers, who's a nice backup. But you don't really have a guy who can carry the mail for you, 25 times a game for 16 games. So I think that's the spot you really have to concentrate on offense. If I was given a B on that or an A-B selection, I would say tight end would be the next one. On defense, you have to look at safety. The safeties on this team right now, J.J. Wilcox, Chris Conte, Keith Tandy's a nice player. They're all just guys, really, Leo. They're just guys. And you've got a chance in this draft. There's some pretty good safeties in this draft. It's a good draft for defensive backs overall. So that's the spot I think I would concentrate on the most. Some would say defensive end. You always want to bolster that area if you can, but I would say safety would be the number one on the defensive side.
In this draft, who should the Bucs take in the first round at 19 and why?
Well, I have a hard time believing that if Dalvin Cook, we just talked about what they need, I have a hard time believing that if Dalvin Cook falls to them at number 19 that they would pass. I really do. At the same time, if one of those 2 big tight ends, O.J. Howard or David Njoku from Miami, is there at 19, I think they've suddenly got a question. And I think they've got a big argument inside the room. The other thing, and we already mentioned him, is if Derek Barnett is there at 19, and he very well could be. Again, this is one of those guys who could be gone in the first 8 picks, could wait until the early second round before he's gone. If those 3 guys are there, I think there's an argument inside that room. I still think Dalvin Cook ends up being the pick, but at the end of the day, I think that's a bit of an argument. Somebody's going to have to get up on that table and pound it to make sure they get the right guy.
Okay, those 3 guys are off the board. Where do the Bucs go?
Oh, wow. Then they try to trade down. If they don't like what's there, they try to trade down. And if that doesn't work, you know what? Take a safety at that spot. You're probably not reaching at that spot for a safety. It's a good spot for a safety. Maybe an offensive lineman comes in there, but I still think the opportunity would be there to trade down because enough teams want offensive linemen that you can probably make a move down there, maybe even move somebody to get a quarterback team in there that wants a quarterback. So I would say go for the safety there if you can't trade down.
Roy, you and I say this year after year after year. They need an edge rusher.
Yeah.
Is that something that's going to happen on Friday, or is it going to be fourth round or later?
I think if it doesn't happen on Friday, it's likely not going to happen. In fact, to be honest with you, to me, it's got to happen on Thursday. I don't think there's elite tight ends or defensive ends in this draft. I don't think there's elite players at that position beyond the first round. I think Derek Barnett is the last one that you really want to go for at that spot. You can get some other nice players that are developmental kind of guys. But you know what? We just saw what Will Golston. It took him 4 years to get to the point where he's really just a starting caliber player, and he's a left end, and he still has to come off the field on rush down. So, pass rush down. So, at the end of the day, I think if you don't get him on Thursday, you pass on the position and just say, you know what? It's something we still have to work on and we'll get later. But at this point, I would say, if you can't get that defensive end on Thursday, pass on them. Don't wait. Don't reach on Friday, and certainly don't reach on Saturday.
We always talk about these diamonds in the rough in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. If they were that good, they would have taken them earlier. Who do you see in that later rounds on offense and defense that the Bucs may start to target in on?
Well, that's where, in my opinion, third round, fourth round, that's another spot where I think you can start looking at cornerbacks, safeties. That's a spot where a guy like Jabril Peppers may fall. Now he's got he's got the bit of the drug issue, haven't had the diluted sample situation. He's a guy who's going to come down a little bit on draft boards, might fall off of draft boards completely. That's a guy I would certainly look at in the third round, maybe even the second. We talked about defensive ends. Taco Charlton, maybe, if he falls to the third round, certainly you might maybe take a look at him there. Again, there's some other cornerbacks, Awuzie, the kid, that's one that I would certainly look at. There's a lot of options there, most of them, in my opinion, in the defensive secondary. That, I think, is where you can get some value in the third and fourth round in this draft. Maybe a tight end, but I would look more at the defensive backs in that spot.
On this defense, if Quan Alexander's in the game, this is a good club. Are they going to be able to find somebody who can step in if he gets hurt?
Well, that's a big issue for this team right now, Leo. There's no doubt about it. And I think that there is an opportunity for this team to pick up some linebackers. They need, look, you've got a Darius Glanton behind him, Jeff Knox, who came out of Canada. That's not bad. They're okay, but there's a kid named Reeves Maben in this draft. You could get him on the third day of the draft. He's got some, he's a bit of a will linebacker type in a Tampa 2 scheme, would fit that scheme really well. I think he would be a good guy to bring in as a possible backup to not just Quan Alexander, but Levante David can play in the middle. That's a guy I think you got to look at a little bit and say, hey, that's somebody maybe a target late rounds. Maybe you get something special there.
Mike Glennon's gone.
Yeah.
They've got to come up with a backup quarterback or a third quarterback. Do they do it in the draft or do it in free agency?
I do it in free agency. And in fact, I got to be honest, I don't think they're done looking for quarterbacks, this football team. I think they're going to bring in another one, but I don't think it's going to be through the draft. Look, they've already spent time developing Ryan Griffin. They're spending time developing Sean Renfree. If they want a developmental guy, there's plenty of them in this draft. That's what this draft is all about at quarterback. They're all developmental guys. But this team needs a quarterback who can step in for Jameis Winston should he get hurt and keep this team going. If they don't think that's Ryan Griffin, I think it's somebody that's out there on the street with an NFL pedigree already. I don't know if it's Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I'm going after somebody for sure who's played the game before and has a little bit of a background.
Roy, we know a two tight end offense really puts pressure on a defense in the base situation on first down. If O.J. Howard is hanging around at 19 or at 16, do the Bucs make a move up?
Leo, I think you're talking about something of a dream scenario for this team. Yeah, I don't think O.J. Howard gets out of the top 10, but if he's suddenly falling and he's 15, 16, like you said, yeah, that's when Tampa has to get on the phone. They have to start making phone calls. They have to say, look, what do you want? I want this tight end. What do you need? What's it going to take? Our second round pick, the first, whatever, you let me know. We've got to move up to get that guy. Because there's only a couple of guys here that are really special tight ends. We mentioned one of them already in David Njoku. Obviously, O.J. Howard is the top of the list. He's a guy he's a guy you go up to get if you've got a shot at him. If they have a shot, I think they'll do it.
Roy, Jason Light is going to be sitting in their draft room, and somebody's going to make a pick, and they're just going to go, where did that come from? If they get to 19 and all of a sudden there's a guy up there at 5, do you pick need or do you pick value?
Oh, you pick value, especially in the first round. If there's a guy that you have ranked 5th on your board, throw out a name, Leonard Fournette. Let's just say for whatever reason, Leonard Fournette falls suddenly in this draft. Who knows why? And you've got Leonard Fournette listed 5th overall on your board and everybody else behind him is gone. You take that guy. You go for the value because there's a reason you put the board together. Trust your board. If there's one thing I've heard general managers tell me more often than not when it comes to the draft, it's trust your board. You put it together for a reason. You did all the homework. Follow the homework. Believe in yourself. Believe in the process.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Roy's mouth to your ears, Roy Cummings, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, my man.
And we'll be right back with Peter Blake to talk draft and players. Welcome back to the beautiful Crown Plaza Hotel here in the West Shore District of Tampa, Florida. We're in the Mojito Lounge. We're joined in this segment by Peter Blake. Peter, thanks for coming on board.
Thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate it, Leo. It's kind of a different setting here. We're at the Mojito, but we're usually on the radio show, get your walk-up music, but we're going to try to be serious today, talk some drafts.
Absolutely. We're talking draft. And Peter is our poor man's Mel Kiper. He is our draft expert for Night Sports Productions.
I love
Peter,
it.
Let's go right into it.
Okay.
Myles Garrett, best player in the draft?
He could be. Here's the thing. He checks all the boxes. He's 6'4", he's 272, runs a 4.6 40, but he's not really dominating on tape. 32 and a half sacks, but 12 of those are against SEC competition. You look at Derek Barnett of Tennessee, he's got 28 out of 33. So at this point, you really don't know what you're getting with Myles Garrett, but because it's such a position of need for the Cleveland Browns, they're going to have to draft him because he's already basically told them, look, if you don't draft me, I'm going to make you pay. And here's two things you got to have in the NFL to win. You got to have a quarterback, and you have to have a guy that can get after the quarterback. So
Yeah, you got to go one way or the other. You got to have somebody who can throw it and somebody who can make him throw it when he doesn't want to.
exactly.
Let's look at the running backs. Fournette, Cook, McCaffrey. How do you rate them?
Well, actually, here's the ranking for me. I think Dalvin Cook is the best running back in this draft, and this is why, because he's a three-down back. He can do it all. He can run inside. He can run outside. He has vision and patience, and he can block. So he would be my number one back. On top of that, he can actually catch, which is really important in the NFL. With that being said, the second guy is Leonard Fournette. And the thing I worry about with Fournette is how committed is he to football? Because he shows up at the combine at 240, still runs a 4.5, but is that going to be an issue? On top of that, he's had injury concerns last year by missing 7 games. But when you think of Fournette, you think of Adrian Peterson. He's kind of a throwback. He's got to develop that catching ability. And then the third guy is Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey, to me, is the wild card. Is he going to be a guy that's an every down back? I'm not really sure about that. I think he's more of a 10 to 12 carry type of player. He's a slot receiver. Here's the thing. Are you going to draft a slot receiver in the first round? I'm not sure. So, to me, those are the running back rankings. I think Cook is number 1, Fournette number 2, and McCaffrey number 3.
We got to look at the X factor, and that's Joe Mixon. Without the baggage, he's a Thursday pick. But with the baggage, the owner's going to make this decision. Does he still go on Thursday, or does he go Friday or later?
I think he actually goes on Thursday, and this is why. Like you said, he can do it all. He has that speed, that explosive ability. He can also catch, but because of the domestic violence worries there, because that's a big issue. You have to sell your fan base on this. You're going to have to sell the female fans, because there's a lot of female fans, Leo, in the NFL. And if you get a domestic abuser on your team, that's going to be a tough sell. But in saying that, I think ultimately he will end up with the Detroit Lions, possibly, or the Green Bay Packers. And then if he gets past them, you know who comes calling. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. They love those troubled players.
Absolutely. Let's go to wide receivers. I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Corey Davis or Mike Williams?
Mike Williams. And you know what? Mike Williams should be a top 5 pick, but if not for a fractured neck, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. This guy has it all. He's 6'4", 220. Does he have the blazing speed like a Calvin Johnson? I'm not really sure about that, but here's the thing. He uses his body in so many ways. He shields defenders. Corey Davis is kind of interesting because when you look at him on tape, he kind of looks like Terrell Owens. But the problem is he hasn't done any combine. He hasn't done any pro days. So already that's a red flag, Leo. He already has injury concerns. So Mike Williams, Corey Davis, and then John Ross, who you forgot to mention. I mean, how could you 4.22 in the 40? That's going to be tough, but he also has his injury concerns. So it's got to be Mike Williams.
You can't coach speed, you can't coach size. Speaking of John Ross, where does he go?
It's a possibility he goes to number 18 at Tennessee because they need a wide receiver. And here's the thing. You have to have a wide receiver to help your quarterback out, okay? And he's got speed to kill. The problem is, can he overcome those injuries? And he had a lot of knee injuries in college. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I think if he falls to Tennessee, Marcus Mariota is just licking his chops.
When you look at the defensive side of the ball, is it Jonathan Allen head and shoulders above everybody else?
Yeah, you know what? Jonathan Allen could actually be the best player in this draft, and here's why. 28 and a half sacks. The guy has some injury concerns with his shoulders, but if you look at tape, he was the best defender on that Alabama defense, and that's saying something because how many first rounders were on that Alabama defense? He dominates. You know what? Jonathan Allen could go top 3, top 5, maybe even top 20 just because of the injury concerns. But to me, he is the best defensive tackle in this draft, period.
Let's look at offensive linemen. Who's the first one off the board?
First one off the board has to be Cam Robinson. 6'6", 322, has the size, the length, everything you want. The problem is with this guy right here, is he a left tackle or is he a right tackle? And why I say that is his speed is not great. And when you play left tackle in the NFL, you're going to have to basically defend against the best pass rushers, the speed rushers. So to me, if a team believes he's a left tackle, they're going to draft him. If not, maybe he goes a little bit further down the line, maybe in the teens, in the 20s, because he's a right tackle. But that's the biggest question with Robinson. He's got the size, but does he got the speed?
I'm going to cheat a little bit and give people a hint on what I'm going to talk about later. Cornerback, safety. Going to be a lot of them going to first round, isn't there, Peter?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely going to be a lot of cornerbacks. I mean, this is a feast or famine for these teams. You look at Tennessee, they may be drafting a corner at number 5. You look at the Chicago Bears, there's a possibility of drafting a safety from LSU, Jamal Williams, who ran a 4.3 off the charts. Malik Hooker, corners like Garen Conley, the kid from Alabama, Marlon Humphreys. There is a lot of secondary help in this draft. These teams are going to take advantage of it. You can better believe that. And look, you have to have a cornerback in this league because when you're playing 3, 4, 5 wide receiver sets, it's important to have those type of guys in your secondary.
You know, Peter, I was brought up where first-round players have to play.
Right.
Second and third round guys have to contribute. They got to be your nickel wide receiver, your nickel cornerback. They have to be your posse wide receiver. Mm-hmm. Who do you see in this draft that's really kind of flying under the radar right now?
Flying under the radar in the secondary position?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
And this, you know what? Flying under the radar, I would have to say, you know, it's Obi Melifonwu from Connecticut. You know, God bless me, I actually said that correctly. You know, he's got all the measurables. He's 6'4", he's 222, he runs a high 40, but what do you know about him? What you know about him is he's got size, he's got speed. NFL teams like that. You can't coach that. Could he be the next Cam Chancellor? It's definitely possible. So,
you know, we look at the quarterbacks coming out, but if you wait to the second and third and fourth round, there's still going to be some serviceable guys come out. When you talk about Watson, you talk about Mahomes, you talk about Trubisky, are we all just talking about the same guy with just a different look to them?
I think we're talking about the same guy besides Deshaun Watson. He's 28-2 with Clemson. He faced top competition. You know, the question with Deshaun Watson is his accuracy, and that's the big question with all these quarterbacks, and that's why a lot of teams are going to look at this draft and they're going to say, you know what, I'm going to hold up on drafting a quarterback and maybe draft one next year.
When you look at the draft itself, what jumps out at you right away with this draft?
It's depth. I mean, and I think the injury situation is really throwing a lot of things out of whack because, again, go back to Jonathan Allen. He could go top 3, he could go top 5. What does the tape say? The tape says he's a top 10 pick, but because of the injury concerns, now he's falling down a little bit. I think it's the depth and the talent in this draft is immense.
And, you know, you talk about depth. There's really no surefire, this guy's going to be the guy player in this draft, is there?
No, there's not. There's really not. You thought it would be Myles Garrett, but when you have Hall of Famer like Warren Sapp saying he believes this guy is lazy and he's not a guy that should be a number 1 pick, you got to kind of take notice. And if you think about it, when you think about Myles Garrett this year in college football, did you think of him taking over games? Not me. I didn't. I just think right now the Cleveland Browns are looking at this guy and they're saying, wow, he's measurables, he's a good character guy, but does he really take over games? Is he dominating, or is he the next Courtney Brown? He may be the next Courtney Brown.
When you look at the different draft boards, why is there such a discrepancy, Peter?
I think it's disinformation. I think it's the talking heads. You know, blame us, blame the guys like us, blame the poor Mel Kipers putting out that information. And I think also it's the injury concerns. It's kind of blowing things, making things out of whack. So, you know, for me, again, it's a depth thing. You look at one prospect, you think he's good. Another guy looks at another prospect and thinks he's good. It's beauty and the eye of the beholder.
That's our draft expert, Peter Blake. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We'll be
Appreciate
right back to the Mojito Lounge here at the Crown Plaza Hotel. We're going to bring Rick Sassone on, talk about some NFL teams and what they plan on doing. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Crown Plaza Hotel here in the West Shore District of Tampa. We're in the Mojito Lounge talking with Rick Sassone of Rocket Sports and Entertainment. We're going to talk, Rick, about the teams and what they're supposed to do. Thank you for joining us.
No, absolutely. My pleasure, Leo.
Rick, when we look at the draft, normally the team that has that first pick, they're salivating. Is this a year when Cleveland is trying to trade out because there's really that can't-miss guy up there?
Well, Cleveland salivating and having the first pick, that's funny. Since 1999, when the Cleveland Browns came back in the league and established themselves, they had the number 1 pick. Donovan McNabb, Edgerrin James, Torrey Holt, Ricky Williams, Champ Bailey. No, they went with Tim Couch. And then the following year in 2000, they also had the first overall draft, and they followed that up with Courtney Brown. So I have news for the Cleveland Browns. Either take Myles Garrett, number 1 overall, who I think is the best player in the draft, or trade down. Does that answer your question?
That does me a world of good to know that everybody on this panel agrees that Myles Garrett is the guy. But the disinformation has started, ladies and gentlemen. Jacksonville is floating the idea they're going to take a quarterback at number 4, and I don't believe that. Jacksonville trying to trade out again, too?
No, there's no way the Jacksonville Jaguars want a quarterback. Blake Bortles is clearly the guy, although he regressed a little bit in 2016. He's still the man. They got Chad Henne, a little long in the tooth. You got to address maybe a backup. They got the young kid out of Arkansas in his second year, Allen. But I would look for them to take a defensive end, maybe a Taco Charlton or a Solomon. Go for a defensive end with their number 4 pick and not trade away and get a quarterback.
Cleveland has the number 1 and the number 12 pick. Tennessee, they're at 5 and 18. New Orleans, 12 and 32. 3 teams with multiple picks in the first round. Do you think this is going to lead to a rash of trades?
There's probably a number of teams that are suitors to move up, but I don't believe it'll lead to a rash of trades. But of course, personal preference, I'm not a big fan of trading in the draft. I think teams overanalyze their draft position and underanalyze their needs and look for values. So I don't really believe it'll lead to a rash of trades, but there are some teams that would definitely trade one of those picks with those teams, and we may see that.
San Francisco's in a tough spot. They got more holes than Swiss cheese.
Why, Chip Kelly still there?
Absolutely. And they have the number 2 pick. Are they going to try to trade down to get more picks, or are they actually going to make that pick at number 2, and if they do, who they take?
Well, I did say that I'm not a big fan of trading in the draft, but in this case, it may be the exception. The biggest, from everything that I believe and I have read, their biggest need is at the quarterback position. And so what I would do is I would try to trade down, and I would go with you know who I'm going to take? Pat Mahomes. Because Trubinsky's probably going to be gone, Watson's probably going to be gone. So if you can trade down and come back with Pat Mahomes as your quarterback to grow into the system, I think that might be a shot for the San Francisco 49ers.
Does John Lynch call the Washington Redskins and say, hey, we'll trade you that number 2 pick for Kirk Cousins? Because John Lynch is a smart guy. He also has a head coach that has worked with Cousins before in Washington. Is this a pipe dream?
I think so. I think he could pick up the phone and make that telephone call, but if I'm Washington, I'm not answering it. I'll tell you where Kirk Cousins may end up, in Tinseltown.
Really?
Just throwing it out there.
That's what I like about you, Rick. You
I
just
told
throw
you
it
I
out
was
there.
going to throw things out there.
Rick, when you look at the draft and you look at the teams 11 and below, which one of those 2 are going to try to trade up into that top 10?
Well, I would think 2 teams that come to mind right off the bat are the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants. New York Giants need a quarterback eventually. Peyton Manning recently retired. Younger brother Eli Manning's right behind him, so we know he's getting long in the tooth. They also need defensive end help. Everybody needs defensive end help, but the Giants need it. The Dallas Cowboys, they are starving for secondary help, both at the corner position and the safety position. I get it, the draft is cornerback and safety deep, and there's a lot of talent out there, but the Dallas Cowboys, Marshawn Lattimore, you'd look great in the silver and blue, playing on the other side of the ball from Ezekiel Elliott.
Rick, when you're looking at this draft, there's some teams that are looking to take that next step to go to the playoffs. The Buccaneers are one of them. Which team do you look at and say, you know, if they have a really good draft, they could really make a jump next year?
Well, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I was at a speaking engagement last night, and I threw it out there. My early prediction is a wild card spot for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're in the NFC South. We talked about that, a rotational division. I think it's up for grabs. I think Atlanta's going to struggle after their implosion in Houston this year at the Super Bowl. So I think the NFC South is wide open. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are that one team where they could tweak something in Dirk Cutter's sophomore year as coach and get into the playoffs.
Can the New York Jets do anything right in the draft?
Well, I saw one draft. I did see one mock draft where they got O.J. Howard. And if they can get him, I think that would be a home run for them. That would be a good thing.
When you look back at the bottom part of the draft, New England traded out. They don't even want any parts of this. But again, they get to play the Jets, the Bills, and the Dolphins.
That's not a rotational division, by
Not
the
a
way.
rotational division, no. Eventually, Tom Brady is going to have to call it a day. Is Garoppolo the guy?
I think to start off, I think he stepped in and did a good job in the beginning of the season in Brady's absence, but that's a plug-and-play system. Bill Belichick, let's face it, didn't he win a game with Jacoby? Didn't they? Then they went, I mean, incredible.
Jacoby, yeah.
When Garoppolo got hurt.
Yeah.
So New England's personnel problems, out of all 32 teams, they basically have none because they'll plug and play. They will find a replacement, and that's all Robert Kraft and his leadership, the best owner in the National Football League.
When the dust settles on Sunday and we look at the draft, usually we look at Cleveland, we look at Buffalo and say, what were they thinking? Is there going to be any team that really just screws it up? I'm saying the Chicago Bears.
Well, I could see the Bears. I did have a thought of who the best team, who was going to do the best in the draft. And I was going to go out on the limb with that. And then I was going to come back with a very safe hedge and say Cleveland will screw it up. Cleveland always screws up. Let me share this with you. This is an unbelievable stat. The Cleveland Browns came back into the league in 1999. Do you know how many times they finished out of last place?
Not
Since
many.
1999. 4. All but 4 years. That's incredible. That's incredible, awful football. So the Browns are going to screw it up.
Rick, we know that Cleveland and Buffalo usually screw up this draft. We've seen it for years. Who's going to be the team that comes out of this the best, do you think?
The team that comes out of this the best, I said Cleveland would screw it up. The team that's going to come out of this best, I am taking a flyer on this. This team doesn't even have a first-round pick, the Los Angeles Rams. I love the fact they didn't go with a retread. They're taking a chance on the kid. 32-year-old Sean McVay is the head coach. I love the kid. I love the family. Great football people. I think the Los Angeles Rams are going to surprise a lot of people, and that's why I thought maybe Kirk Cousins ends up in Los Angeles.
Good thought. Rick, I can't remember a draft when so many teams are trying to trade down. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yes, I think there's a reason to that. I believe that because the talent is not known, it's all over the board. I read about it. Nobody really knows how to rate these guys. And I think a lot of teams at the top that have needs, those position players aren't there. So a combination between that, you see the teams at the top maybe want to abandon their spot.
That's what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Rick Sassone giving us his opinion. We're coming back, getting out of here with a couple of quick cows and our parting shots. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, it's April, and we're talking about the National Football League. That can mean only one thing. It's draft time. The draft was moved in 2016 out of its New York confines to Chicago. This year, the NFL returns to its roots. Yes, it's going back to the city of brotherly love. Philadelphia is going to be the host of the 2017 draft. We are going to talk about the draft here at the Night Sports Productions pre-draft program. I'm joined by Roy Cummings of FanRag Sports Network and Peter Blake from the Tan Talk Sports Network and Rick Sassone. from Rocket Sports and Entertainment. Gentlemen, thanks for coming out today.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having
very
me.
much for having me.
Thank you,
let's,
Leo.
Let's start with a real simple question, guys. Is this a good move for the NFL to be moving from place to place with the draft? Roy, let's start with you.
Oh, absolutely. I think you're going to see them do this. They're kind of stealing a little something here from the National Hockey League, actually. The National Hockey League moves its draft every year to a different venue. Everybody in every city gets a chance to see how it works out. I think it's a good thing. I think you're going to see it end up in Tampa at some point soon. But yeah, they're going to start moving this thing around, give everybody a chance, the fan base in every city, to get a chance to see this draft and see what it's all about.
Peter, weigh in on this for me, will you?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love the idea because you get to see more fan bases than New York's. I mean, who wants to see New York fans boo? We want to see Philly fans boo. We want to see Chicago fans boo. That's absolutely the right idea for the NFL. And I know one thing, I'm looking forward to seeing how many Philly fans and how long they boo Roger Goodell at the start of the NFL draft.
I don't think they'll boom as loud as the New England fans, but
You're
absolutely.
probably right about that.
Rick, weigh in on this for me.
Well, I had no problem with it being in New York City every year, the home of the NFL, the headquarters of the NFL. However, when they moved it to Chicago and now we're in Philadelphia, I thought about it. Hey, I think it's a great idea to move it to every city. Matter of fact, I think every NFL team, city, should get a chance to host it, except Cleveland.
You just don't like Cleveland.
Hey,
do you, Rick?
Cleveland, tell us how you really feel.
They're
Ladies
getting
and
it
gentlemen,
next.
we're going to give you a little teaser here of what you'd expect on this show. And I'm going to tell you right now, we are going to settle that quarterback issue once and for all. And it may be best 2 out of 3 falls, but we're going to get it done here. Roy, what do you got in your segment?
I'll tell you right now, it's all about the Buccaneers. It's about quarterbacks. It's about sleepers in the draft. It's about different things that are going to happen. Who's going to fall? Why are these guys some are rated high, some are rated low? We're getting into a lot of different topics.
Peter, you're our guru for the draft. What do you got coming up?
Yeah, is Myles Garrett the best player in the 2017 NFL draft? And you may be surprised how I have my running backs ranked in this draft.
Rick, you look at the teams. What teams, besides Cleveland, we know they're going to screw up, but where are they going?
Well, I'll tell you what, one thing that I think teams do, I think they overanalyze, and fans do as well, draft position. You need to analyze your needs more and kind of overlook a little bit draft value. Sometimes a lot of players or a lot of teams will draft somebody because they can get them at a good spot, but they don't even need them because you never really know, guys, how talent is going to pan out.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We're going to be right back with Roy Cummings. We're going to talk Buccaneers. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crown Plaza Hotel, the Mojito Lounge in the beautiful West Shore District of Tampa, Florida. We're going to do a little quick cows. 3 quick questions everybody's going to answer. First thing, who's the best quarterback in the draft? I'm telling you right now, it's Deshaun Watson. He's 28-2 in the last 2 years. He's a winner. He's graduated in 3 years with a degree. He's beaten Alabama. Oh, by the way, that guy Urban Meyer.
It's my fault.
Okay.
Keep going. Deshaun Watson. Pick up from Deshaun Watson.
Okay. All right. Let me know.
Go.
Deshaun Watson is the best quarterback in this draft. He's 28-2 in the last 2 years. By the way, won the national championship, beat Alabama, graduated in 3 years with a degree, and he hung on Urban Meyer, the only shutout loss in his career. Dabo Swinney said, you pass on this guy, you're passing on Michael Jordan. And he may be right. Roy, what do you think?
Well, you're right about one thing, Leo. Yeah, he's the best quarterback in this draft right now, but he's not the best quarterback prospect. The best quarterback prospect, guys, is Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. That kid can play. He's got a tremendous arm, tremendous upside. Yeah, he's a little raw. He needs some work, but he'll get it. Like every other quarterback in this draft, he's a developmental player. You want the guy who's going to develop into the best quarterback long term? Patrick Mahomes, Texas Tech.
Peter, who you going with?
Actually, it's a surprise here, because I'm a Florida State fan. I'm going to go with Brad Kaya because he's played in a pro type of offense, 27 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. This guy's underrated. He may go 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Again, I'm not taking a quarterback in this draft, but if I'm going to and develop this guy, it's going to be Brad Kaya from Miami.
Rick, where are you going?
I'm going to agree with Roy. Texas Tech, Red Raider, Pat Mahomes. I was flipping through the television late one Saturday night, and I was like, wow, who is this kid? He just caught my eye. He just seems to have a knack to get things done, and he's a winner. He's got a strong arm. I like him. And Roy, I agree with you. He's very transferable to the NFL program.
No doubt about it.
Second quick, Cal. Who's the first team going off the reservation with a pick that's going to make you scratch your head and go, where are they going and what are they thinking? I'm saying the Chicago Bears, that they take a quarterback that no one's even thought of. They're going to take Deshaun Kaiser with that third pick because he's local, easy to sign.
I can
Roy,
see that.
what do you think?
I'll tell you what. There's a new general manager in town in Washington, Bruce Allen. Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans know who he is. They know what he did to their organization. He destroyed it. That team's still trying to recover from that. That's going to be the first guy to go off the reservation because nobody is less prepared to pick players in this draft than Bruce Allen and the Washington Redskins. That's the team to watch out for. They're going to do something nobody sees coming.
Peter?
Yeah, it's going to be the New York Jets because they're really they're the Jets. I mean, honestly, you take a quarterback last year in Christian Hackenberg, you're most likely going to take Mitchell Trubisky. He's played 1 year. It doesn't make any sense. They missed the boos. They're going to get booed again by Philadelphia fans.
We talked about it. The Cleveland Browns, I'm going to play it safe here. There's only one thing that can get them off the schneid for me, and that's taking Myles Garrett #1 overall and just running with it. If they take anyone else, that's going to be a mistake.
Our last quick, Cal. Who's the first team that's going to trade up and try to get a player? I'll tell you what, guys, I think it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If Dalvin Cook is still hanging around when they get to 8, 9, or 10, I think they're moving up. Roy?
Wow. I don't see that happening. I think the team to watch out for, New England Patriots. They've traded out of the first round, out of the second round. They got 2 third-round picks. They want to get back into this thing. They want a first-round pick. That's the team to watch out for. They're going to trade back into the first round in this thing.
Peter?
Yeah, Leo, great minds think alike because I actually think it's going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's going to be at number 13 with the Arizona Cardinals. And the reason why is Jason Light has that relationship with Steve Kיים. Dalvin Cook's going to be the pick. Mark it down.
I'm
Rick?
glad you didn't say trade up to get a long snapper.
Anything's possible, right, Rick?
Absolutely.
Anything's
We saw
possible.
that last year. I think it's going to be the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys have a secondary that resembles a Division II college. I think they try to trade up with anyone that's a seller to try to get Marshawn Lattimore from The Ohio State University and have one Buckeye on each side, Ezekiel Elliott and Marshawn Lattimore.
Gentlemen, parting shots. My parting shot is watch the draft. Secondary people, cornerbacks and safeties, a minimum of 9 to go in the first round. You can book that. Roy?
I'll tell you what, there's been an awful lot of talk in this show, outside of this show, about Dalvin Cook going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers somewhere. 8, 9, 19, doesn't matter. Watch out. They're going to take a tight end at number 19.
Peter?
I think right now you have to look at Reuben Foster. You have to look at Jabril Peppers with their drug failures. How far did they slip down on that draft board?
Rick?
I think it's defensive back heavy. I think a lot of defensive backs are going to go. We're in this joyful, pass-happy National Football League. Every year, people are looking for, hey, cover corners. They're hard to come by. The talent is really hard to come by. If you can get one, I think you're right. A lot are going to go very high in the draft.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's our pre-draft show. But in 2 weeks, we're going to look at the post-draft show. We're going to see which one of the 4 of us is right. And you know what? The loser's got to buy a pizza. And it's probably going to be Peter, but we're not going to put that spot on him. Guys, thanks for coming. Folks, we will see you in 2 weeks with the post-draft. Have a good night.